Hi, I'm Tim Wheeler. I'm the Director of Engineering here at SquaredUp. And in this session, I'm going to be talking about the 4 DORA metrics. I'm going to talk about what they are, how to create them, and how you can best display them using SquaredUp. I'll do a short demonstration showing some of the unique features that SquaredUp has that will really help you make the best use of those DORA metrics to help you collaborate across your teams and make your DevOps practice more efficient and more successful. In the world we're in these days, DevOps is a core piece of any company that needs to deliver software, whether that's software internally, software externally, or part of a service provider. You need a great DevOps practice to make sure you're going to meet your company goals. Through this session, I'll talk about some of the benefits of using the DORA metrics, some of the challenges and pitfalls, and hopefully how you can get the outcome you want, not just for your DevOps practice, but again, to make sure that your business and your business goals are met. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? So the DORA metrics, in fact, the DORA Labs team, started working on researching and assessing DevOps practices about 12 years ago. And over that time, they started to produce an annual report called the State of DevOps. And in there, they defined 4 DevOps metrics that, when used together, can help assess both the efficiency and quality of your DevOps processes, particularly your deployment. Let's take a look at the 4 DORA metrics. The first metric is deployment frequency, and probably the easiest one to understand. It is quite simply the number of deployments that you successfully make to production in a day. Second metric is the lead time for changes, and this is how long it takes you to take code that is ready to go to production to actually be deployed. It's not how long it takes to work on the requirements or how long the developer took to write the code. It is all about the deployment time. And this is pretty consistent within all 4 of the DORA metrics. It's really focused on that deployment, not on the other processes that may happen around it. Thirdly, we have failed deployment recovery time. So this is the amount of time it takes, on average, to recover from something you've deployed to production that has caused either an outage or a very severe bug or incident. And yeah, the amount of time it takes for your team to recover that situation. So if your strategy is to always roll back, it will be roughly the average time it takes for you to roll back that deployment. Finally, we have change failure rate. That is the percentage of deployments that fail or rather than fail, that cause an incident or an outage in production versus the total number of deployments that you're doing. These 4 metrics can be grouped into 2 categories. The first 2, deployment frequency and lead time for changes, are really about throughput and how rapidly you're able to do deployments, whereas the second 2 are much more about the quality of the deployments that you're doing. So used in isolation, you don't really get the benefit, because if I wanted to just increase deployment frequency, I could simply make one-liner comment or text changes throughout the product, and suddenly I'm deploying 100 times a day, which sounds great, but what have I actually achieved? Let's move on to look at some of the DORA benefits now. So maybe surprisingly, one of the first benefits you'll get is simply by having the conversation about DORA metrics. Talking about what you're trying to achieve, how you're going to define those metrics, will already bring you several steps forward in getting to know who's responsible maybe for the DevOps processes. Maybe there's one person that's just patching your deployment pipelines, and maybe there's a lot of knowledge stuck with them. Once you start trying to define the metrics, you're going to have to better understand your DevOps processes. And you're also going to have to talk about where the data comes from. In this modern world of ours, tool sprawl is a really common challenge, right? There is data coming from many places, and understanding where that data lives is going to be part of that conversation. Secondly, we've got continuous improvement. Once you've got your DORA metrics, it gives you a great way of experimenting with your DevOps processes, adding things, taking things away, maybe adding a different tool or a different type of testing into your pipeline. You can do these things with confidence once you've got these metrics to refer back to. Then you'll have a good sense of whether you've really improved things and moved your DevOps processes forward. Thirdly, collaboration, which ties in a little bit to my first point, but by having a common goal, a common set of metrics that you can talk about, refer back to, it will help bring everyone together into that conversation about what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to move forward. Fourthly, cost savings. Yes, it can be the dollar cost, but often it's the cost you might be saving in terms of resource, particularly if you've got maybe engineers assigned to troubleshooting incidents or trying to make sure your end users are happy. Less incidents, less unhappy users, more time for engineers to write code. Not to mention the saving just in terms of people's mental health and a happy, vibrant DevOps culture, which surely is what everyone wants. Now let's look at some of the challenges. We talked about defining metrics. That can be a challenge. You know, when we talked about deploying to production, production is going to mean different things for different teams. It's not always going to be as simple as, well, I build the entire application and I push it live, and then I have end users using it. Sometimes it might be part of a set of microservices. You might be part of a bigger e-commerce site and you've just got the checkout part of the system, and you may not be able to deploy to true production. But what's important is, what is that team doing? What have they considered done? And really, with these metrics, it doesn't matter too much exactly how perfect the definition is, as long as you're consistent with what you're measuring and as long as it's going to work for you. Secondly, I talked about tool sprawl earlier. Sourcing the data can be a challenge. There are many tools, they offer up the data in different ways, they might look differently within those tools. So being able to bring that together in one place and being able to calculate your metrics can be a challenge. And hopefully, I'm going to show you shortly a good tool for doing that. Thirdly, gamification. Please don't use DORA metrics to try and drive teams to do more work or do something very specific. If you make it part of someone's goals, then they're probably going to find a way to game the solution, and that number's maybe not going to be as useful as you think it will be. You're dealing with engineers after all. If there's a problem, they're going to find a way to solve it. And then finally, no roll-up. Here at SquaredUp, we love doing roll-up. We love rolling up health. We love rolling up to different views. We're using our dashboards. But the DORA metrics are not intended to be rolled up. Not truly. And you're not expected to have an organization level view of DORA metrics. You need to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. There's no point taking a bunch of teams that work on different systems, that have different sign-offs and gates. Maybe one's working on servers, one's working on microservices, one's doing bespoke applications. You can't just combine those metrics. They need to be worked at individually. You need to be tracking them separately so that those teams will benefit from looking at those metrics and seeing what they can do to improve them. Okay, that's enough talking, I think. So let's get on to some demoing. Here I've got a really simple dashboard with just the 4 metrics laid out. And I'm going to show you briefly how to set one up. So we'll just take deployment frequency. We'll do this one from scratch. So I'm going to take Azure DevOps. I know I'm going to deal with pipelines. And build runs will give me the historic data that I'm after. I'm going to hopefully find a pipeline here with some good data. You can see in the background I'm getting data. And in parameters, I can then select various different filters to pull back the data I want. So I know I want pipelines that have succeeded, and I happen to know that the one that's going to go to production is the master branch. So we can click done on that. Then you've got 4, that's not many, so we'll change the time frame. Let's look back over 30 days. Sounds reasonable. And I've got a few more. So that's the data, but I still need to calculate the metric. And so for that, I'm going to turn on SQL Analytics. And I'm going to just do a count. Excellent test of my typing. And for simplicity, I'm going to divide by 30 days because I know that's the time frame I chose. And we execute this SQL. We'll see I've basically got 1. So I had 31 results divided by 30. We're going to change this to a scalar on the right-hand side. And then I'm just going to reduce the number of decimal places to 1 to make it a little tidier. And there we go. We save the tile. And that's a DORA metric in however many seconds that was. I've got a slightly more complicated one here where I've selected more than one pipeline. So then obviously I have a slightly bigger number. I'll now just step through some of the other 3 metrics that we've got. Got lead time for change. So with this one, I've taken a very simple approach of just looking at the time it takes PRs to merge. So I'm using GitHub. Again, I've taken 30 days. And then in my SQL to do the calculation, I've essentially worked out the number of hours between the creation and the merging of the PR, taken an average and rounded it, and that's brought me back this 4.9 days. We will move on to change failure rate. As I mentioned before, it's the percentage of deployments that have caused some sort of system degradation. Here at SquaredUp, I record those in JIRA, so I know that all the ones that have caused an issue are going to be inside JIRA. And I know that all the pipelines, as we saw before, are in Azure DevOps. And again, using SQL Analytics, I can take them both in as different data sets, combining 2 different tools. And essentially, we've got the total number of incidents from JIRA divided by the total number of pipelines, and then multiplying by 100 to give me that percentage. And lastly, but not least, we've got failed deployment recovery time. So here I've just taken the number of incidents. So again, coming out of JIRA. And I'm actually pulling this back using JQL. So you can always execute this in JIRA itself and then copy it here. And then the calculation, again, is the amount of time it's taken between that JIRA being raised and the resolution date. In other places, for instance, you might have ServiceNow, for instance, another common tool. And so that's telling me that on average, in the last 30 days, it's taken me 3.3 days for us to recover from those incidents. Now, that's a simple view. Let's talk about a few of the features of SquaredUp that really make this an ideal tool for DORA metrics. Firstly, as you've already seen, data sources. So these are our integrations that let you pull back data from many different tools. In fact, there are nearly 70, I think, bespoke integrations designed for things like AWS code pipelines, Azure DevOps, Jenkins, etc. And also we have more generic ones for maybe those bespoke tools or internal data such as Web API, PowerShell, the CSV if you're taking from a flat file, and many others. Just go back to the dashboard. Now, some of the other features that make this really useful is monitoring. And if I go to this slightly more enhanced dashboard, you can see that I've set up several monitors, or right now they are nice bright colors. And what I've done here, if we take the change failure tile, is I've turned on monitoring and set a threshold after which I want this to be, in this case, red. So for instance, I've said 10 is my threshold, my limit. When that number is greater than 10, I want this to be red. I want to know that this is potentially a problem and it's something I'm going to look at. Now we can take this one step further, actually. Once we have monitors, we can go into the monitors tab over here, and I can add a notification rule. So I'll just pick that one monitor we were looking at. I've already forgotten what it was, change failure rate, I think. So we can select that monitor, and then we can pick any integration here. So I can email it to myself, I can Slack it, I can put it on Teams channel, ServiceNow, or I can use Zapier or custom webhooks. Pretty much get it into any tool I want, so that instead of relying on me to look at the dashboard will tell me when there's something important to look at. Now that's pretty cool. But actually, probably my favorite feature for this is our ability to share this. So in SquaredUp, you don't need a license to see these dashboards. You can create what we call an open access link. So here I can tick anyone in my organization. I can click copy, I can send that link out, and it will create a read-only version of that dashboard. So I can put these numbers right in front of the people that need to see it. So I might work with this every day or every week. I might talk to my teams, but maybe my boss or senior management are only going to care about this in a report once a month, once a quarter. Well, for them, these open access dashboards are ideal. And if I want to go one step further, I can also schedule these dashboards and get them to arrive in people's inboxes or team channels right before like a meeting that you're going to discuss them about. Again, putting them front and center as part of your day-to-day work. In this dashboard here, you can see I've actually added some extra visualizations. And this is just an example of how I can also use the data beyond DORA metrics. So for instance, with deployments, the one number is fine for a rolling number, but it's quite helpful for me to see how the week has gone. Like, is this average number being caused by spikes? Do I have very high numbers and very low numbers? Or does it go up and down just because these 2 days happen to be the weekend and we don't make people work the weekends in our company? Also, when we look at the change failure rate, the one that's red, I can quickly look across the number of deployment failures that I've got, and I can see that there's 28th, there's the 2nd, just one at a time, nothing much going on. And then suddenly I've got a cluster of spikes, and that will help me have a better conversation with the people I need to speak to about what potentially is going on with those deployments. I've already got one step forward before I've drilled into the raw numbers. Okay, I think that's probably enough of a demo for now. So, in summary, we've talked about the 4 DORA metrics. I've hopefully explained those well. We've talked about the need to define them, the need to source the data that you're going to use to create them, and the power of displaying them together and using them together, and how important that is for really getting the best out of them so that you can make your DevOps practices successful. And sharing. Sharing really does help a lot. Putting those numbers in front of people that need to see them and making them a focus. And then probably my number one piece of advice is to start now. Start as soon as you can. Start small. One metric, one team. Just getting going is the most important thing. Because I think you'll find as soon as you start having those conversations, you'll get a real benefit out of both the conversations and the metrics that you'll generate. Now, I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for listening. And as always, happy dashboarding.